It began with an idea so absurd, so outrageously impractical, that even hardened naval engineers laughed at it. But what if I told you that one man's vision, dubbed by skeptics as insane, led to the production of 2,710 ships in just 1,279 days, faster than anything the world had ever seen, in a war where every convoy counted, where every lost cargo ship meant lost men and material? This wild scheme did what bureaucracy and tradition could not. It broke the mold. And the man behind it? Not an admiral, not a general, just a welder, with a plan to outbuild Hitler. In 1941, the Atlantic was a graveyard. German U-boats, slick and stealthy, sliced through convoys like sharks through schools of fish. They hunted merchant vessels relentlessly, severing the Allies' lifeline to vital resources, ammunition, food, and fuel. Britain was on the brink, rationing supplies to near starvation levels. Across the ocean, American factories stood ready to mobilize, but a bottleneck loomed: ships. They could build tanks, guns, and radios. They just couldn't get them across the water fast enough. The U.S. Navy relied on traditional shipbuilding techniques that demanded time, precision, and thousands of skilled craftsmen. With submarines sinking more ships than America could build, it wasn't just a problem. It was a crisis. Enter Henry J. Kaiser, a man known more for building highways and dams than hulls and decks. He had no formal naval background, no shipyards of his own, and certainly no pedigree in battleship design. But what Kaiser possessed was vision, industrial, relentless vision. He saw shipbuilding not as tradition but as an engineering problem, one solvable with brute innovation. While seasoned admirals scoffed at the thought of assembly-line ships, Kaiser asked a different question. What if ships could be built like cars? Not crafted, but manufactured. At his newly established yards on the West Coast, he ripped pages from Detroit's playbook, deploying rolling production lines, prefabricated sections, and an army of untrained laborers, many of them women and minorities who had never touched a rivet before. To the old guard, it was heresy. To Kaiser, it was necessary. Because if the United States couldn't outfight Hitler's wolf packs in the depth of the Atlantic, it had only one option left: to outbuild them. Kaiser's radical experiment was named the Liberty Ship, a cargo vessel designed not for speed or beauty, but for brutal, functional utility. Each measured about 441 feet long and could carry over 10,000 tons of cargo. But what set them apart wasn't their size, it was their simplicity. Naval architects had slashed the usual blueprints and stripped down the components to the bare essentials. Nearly everything could be prefabricated, allowing sections to be welded together rather than painstakingly riveted in dry docks. This shift to welding was a technological and cultural earthquake. Welding was faster, cheaper, and required less training. But it was controversial. Many traditional shipbuilders believed welds were weaker, more prone to cracking under stress. Still, necessity steamrolled doubt. With the Axis closing in and the oceans turning deadly, the gamble had to be taken. Kaiser's crews, sometimes working around the clock in torn clothes and cold rain, managed to turn out Liberty ships in numbers that seemed supernatural. One vessel, the SS Robert E. Peary, was constructed in just 4 days and 15 hours, a feat that stunned even the skeptics. Yet as the Liberty ships began to pour out in droves, sometimes at a rate of 2 per day, the cracks in the Revolution, quite literally, began to show. Welded hulls, while faster to assemble, occasionally betrayed hidden weaknesses. In cold Atlantic waters, metal contracted unpredictably, and where rivets might flex and absorb stress, welded joints could snap under pressure. Some Liberty ships cracked in half without warning, a horrifying phenomenon that led sailors to nickname them Kaiser's coffins. Investigations pointed to a mix of inferior steel, rushed procedures, and design vulnerabilities. But Kaiser and his engineers didn't shrink from the backlash. They adjusted steel formulas, reinforced critical joints, and retrained welders. Adaptation remained their greatest weapon, and despite the risks, the ships kept coming. America was no longer losing the numbers game. Thanks to a welder's wild idea, the tide was starting to turn. In battle, the Liberty ships proved both indispensable and surprisingly durable. Despite their early troubles, they were not designed to fight, but to sustain the fight, to ferry Sherman tanks, food rations, fuel drums, and entire field hospitals to the front lines of distant continents. Staggering under the weight of war, some limped through storms and torpedo strikes alike, their crews patching cracks with whatever they had, determined not to lose ground to the sea. The most extraordinary part wasn't their resistance to destruction, but their capacity to resupply survival. In Operation Overlord alone, more than 3 million tons of cargo were transported aboard these so-called ugly ducklings, a logistical feat impossible without them. And though some perished in fire and waves, thousands fulfilled their final mission to deliver freedom one haul at a time. They turned the Atlantic from a graveyard into a highway. In the end, it wasn't elegance or tradition that won the day, but speed, sacrifice, and the stubborn brilliance of a radical vision. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Kaiser's success was not just mechanical but psychological. He shattered the myth that only experts could build ships, that only tradition could guide wartime industry. His workers, many pulled from the margins of American labor, black women from the South, rural farmhands from the Midwest, first-generation immigrants were trained quickly, paid fairly, and given purpose. The shipyards became melting pots of determination, humming with the racket of hammers and the fierce energy of unity. People who had never even seen the ocean found themselves turning out the vessels that would cross it. What Kaiser built wasn't just a fleet. It was a workforce, a living engine of democracy that beat back the darkness with roaring forges and maritime steel. These weren't nameless laborers. They were the front line behind the front lines, and every hull launched into the sea was a monument to their resolve. The enemy could not torpedo that, but the legacy of the Liberty ship went beyond the war. When the last shots faded and the great arsenals of democracy stood quiet, these vessels continued their utility in peacetime. Many were sold for commercial use, powering post-war trade, while others were scrapped or repurposed into schools, warehouses, even floating factories. More importantly, the philosophy behind them, mass production, adaptability, inclusiveness, outlived the vessels themselves. Kaiser's model directly influenced post-war American industry, laying the groundwork for modern logistics, modular manufacturing, and rapid prototyping. And for the thousands who built them, faded blueprints and rusted hulls became memories of purpose and strength. Proof that sometimes the most transformative idea doesn't come from a sudden flash of genius, but from the grind of ordinary people who refuse to accept the limits of what's possible. And yet, not all lessons from the Liberty ship experience were victories. For every vessel that made its voyage, and every welder who found pride on the production line, there were stories of strain, burnout, and breakdown beneath the surface. Rushing to meet quotas meant long hours, loosened safety standards, and the human cost of wartime urgency. Women who had never swung a hammer faced physical injury and emotional exhaustion, while racial tensions flared in overcrowded yards that preached unity but practiced inequality. In the post-war years, some of these workers were laid off without recognition, discarded once their labor was no longer needed. The very system that elevated their contribution also highlighted its fleeting value. Kaiser's dream had indeed rewired American industry, but in doing so, it also revealed the fragility of an economy built on emergency mobilization. Still, even in its contradictions, the Liberty ship program remains one of the most urgent testaments to how chaos and courage can coexist. It showed that when the stakes are existential, innovation can come not from generals, but from the grinder's sparks on a shipyard floor. Today, only a few Liberty ships remain afloat, preserved as museum relics to a forgotten revolution. One such ship, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien, still sails under its own power, a living monument to industrial audacity. Visitors walk its decks and glance up at its steel seams, rarely aware that each weld tells a story of wartime improvisation, of fingers bloodied from 12-hour shifts, of blue-collar ingenuity that triumphed over textbook theory. This was not a war won by perfection, but by resolve. The Liberty ship wasn't elegant, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to float, to carry, and to multiply. In its rust and rivets lives the memory of an America that once dared the impossible and, for a moment, made speed and simplicity the greatest weapons of all. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Still, The true genius of Kaiser's Liberty ships wasn't just in how they were built, but in how they redefined what was conceivable during total war. They represented a mindset shift, a pivot from craftsmanship to velocity, from prestige to practicality. Naval purists scorned their crude lines and lack of armor, but for the convoys pushed to the brink, they were salvation in steel. Historians often dwell on battles, on presidents and prime ministers, but the Liberty ship was proof that wars are also won in welding bays and drafting rooms, where stubborn dreamers challenged the limits of scale and speed. It was audacity forged into hull plates. From the fiery chaos of Kaiser's shipyards emerged a fleet that reshaped not just global conflict, but the future of production itself, a legacy born not of admirals, but of one welder's impossible idea that changed the tide of war. Among the few who truly grasped the seismic shift the Liberty ship represented was the enemy. German naval intelligence, initially dismissive, quickly took notice as Kaiser's steel flotilla began to overwhelm the seas. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, reportedly lamented that for every ship his submarine sank, the Allies produced several more to replace it, often within weeks. It was a sobering calculus. The German doctrine of attrition, so reliant on strangling supply lines, suddenly faced an industrial hydra of American resilience. No sooner had a Liberty ship gone under than another emerged from the mist, flags still wet with paint, crewed by men and women who had once worked assembly lines or plowed fields. The Germans had not just underestimated America's factories, they had underestimated its imagination. With each weld, each launch, Kaiser's vision waged a silent offensive, 1 ton of cargo at a time, gradually suffocating the Axis ambitions beneath the weight of logistical inevitability. What they could not outgun, they struggled to outlast. The final tally was staggering. 2,710 Liberty ships launched in just over 3.5 years each, a defiant answer to tyranny, each a milestone in the war's industrial race. No ornate christenings, no elegance carved into their bows, just names of American patriots, laborers, and unsung heroes etched onto their steel hulls. They weren't just cargo vessels, they were lifelines lashed together by courage and ambition. In Kaiser shipyards, workers forged not just the means to deliver tanks and food, but a radical blueprint for fighting overwhelming odds with speed, scale, and the audacity to believe that anything could be done faster, cheaper, and with ordinary hands. And somewhere under the din of grinding metal and driving rain, one welder's insane idea carved itself into the bones of history. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Even today, the Liberty ship story reverberates through modern engineering breakthroughs and crisis response. In times of catastrophe, natural disaster, pandemic, or war, the lessons of mass production, decentralized labor, and fearless scaling echo in logistics rooms and emergency task forces. From vaccine rollout facilities to disaster relief shipping, echoes of Kaiser's method surface wherever complexity meets urgency. The Liberty ship was more than steel and steam. It was mindset, a rejection of what can't be done. Its designers didn't wait for innovation to be perfect. They made it fast and made it count. And in doing so, they left behind a blueprint not just for wartime survival, but for peacetime ambition. Because sometimes it's not the weapon that turns the tide, but the will to build something that dares to defy the odds. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In academic circles, the Liberty ship revolution serves as a keystone case study in the intersection of warfare, industry, and social transformation. Scholars dissect it not merely as a triumph of logistics, but as a moment when barriers broke between genders, races, and even ideologies. For the first time, a welder's arc held equal strategic weight to a general's battle plan. It forced military planners and politicians alike to reconsider what counted as power in a war defined as much by shipping manifests as by firepower. The genius wasn't hidden in classified blueprints or secret weapons labs, but out in the open, in the scaffolding of shipyards lit by gritty resolve and acetylene flame. Decades later, as artificial intelligence, automation, and global supply chains dominate modern conflict preparation, The lessons of the Liberty ship endure. Don't wait for perfection. Pivot to speed. And draw strength from everyday people. Henry J. Kaiser never built a warship in a traditional sense, but his vision became the keel beneath democracy's arsenal and echoes still every time the world asks, how do we act fast when everything is on the line? As a historian, I often remind my students that history rarely hinges on lone heroes or singular inventions. But sometimes, just sometimes, a single disruptive idea does tilt the axis of events. The Liberty ship was such a disruption. It did not sink battleships nor charge beaches. Yet its contribution may well have been more decisive. In the fight for freedom, it fed the front lines and kept the engines of resistance from running dry. Its genesis in the mind of one determined man and its birth through the hands of tens of thousands of Americans revealed the hidden artery of modern warfare: logistics, scale, and imagination. And from the welders who braved the flame to the mariners who weathered the storm, their legacy is not merely one of industrial triumph. It is a reminder that brilliance often comes wrapped in doubt, that absurdity becomes necessity when survival is on the line, and that true victory belongs not just to those who fight, but to those who dare to build. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. What makes the Liberty ship's legacy even more profound is how it continues to challenge our assumptions about innovation. It wasn't the result of years of laboratory refinement or elite think tanks, but an act of functional desperation turned brilliance. In Kaiser's world, constraints weren't obstacles, they were fuel. What had seemed insane was really just untried, a disorderly gamble that rewrote the rules of possibility. Today, in our era of complex threats and slow-moving institutions, the Liberty ship reminds us that transformation isn't always graceful. Sometimes it's mass-produced, hastily assembled, and born in the sweat of ordinary people behind welding masks and blueprints. It tells us that speed can win wars, unity can overwhelm expertise, and an idea deemed too radical may be exactly what history needs to survive its darkest hour. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In the decades since World War II, the notion that a single logistical innovation could tip the balance in a global conflict remains both a warning and a hope. The Liberty ship was not glamorous, it was not elegant, but it was there, on the waves, in the storm, during the fire. Built not for glory but for function. It brought with it a lesson that today's world, fraught with geopolitical tension and fragile supply chains, cannot afford to forget. Whether in cyber defense or climate adaptation, pandemics or energy crises, we are often searching for silver bullets when what we need are Liberty ships, fast, adaptable, imperfect solutions built by the many, not the few. That is, the revelation buried beneath rivets and rust, preserved not only in museums, but in our capacity to act under pressure. Somewhere in that incredible figure 2,710 ships in 1,279 days is a reminder that history doesn't always wait for the perfect idea. Sometimes, it salutes the insane one that dared to try. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So, when we examine the arc of the Liberty ship, from improbable experiment to war-winning infrastructure, we're not just looking back at an engineering marvel. We're staring into the DNA of our modern response systems. The story reveals a truth often missed in the fog of war and the gloss of history books. Innovation doesn't need to shimmer, it needs to show up. It needs to float, to function, and to be repeatable under pressure. The next crisis will likely not come with time to plan or elegance to spare. It will demand what Kaiser gave us: a willingness to rethink, retool, and rebuild at breakneck speed. And perhaps that's the ultimate legacy of this insane idea. Not the ships themselves, but the audacity they proved possible. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. In the end, the Liberty ship program was a collision of chaos and clarity, a wartime epiphany forged through the roar of furnaces and the resolve of a citizen army. Its success was not born from flawless planning, but from imperfect humans solving urgent problems with raw ingenuity. Today, we lionize the fast and the sleek, the smart and the surgical, but the Liberty ship was none of those. It was rugged, repetitive, and relentlessly needed. And that is why it worked. When the world was falling apart, America didn't just build ships. They built belief that victory could be manufactured, one weld at a time. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. And as the years stretch on and the last surviving welders slowly slip into history, the Liberty ship stands not just as a relic of past triumph, but as a challenge to our future selves. Will we ignore its lessons, relegating them to dusty exhibits and placards? Or will we heed what it taught us, that boldness under pressure, collective will, and disruptive thinking can overcome even the most nightmarish odds? In an age where complexity paralyzes action and perfection delays progress, perhaps the Liberty ship's truest offering is this: the blueprint for moving fast with purpose, without apology. Because sometimes, winning doesn't mean being the best, it means being first, being ready, being willing to build when others only hesitate. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. The tale of the Liberty ship is more than a footnote in naval history. It is a blueprint for what happens when necessity drowns doubt. A welder's idea, once seen as preposterous by seasoned commanders, lit a fire beneath the industrial backbone of America, turning possibility into production at a scale previously thought impossible. The Liberty ship wasn't just a triumph of steel, it was a triumph of attitude. Ruthless speed over ceremony, function over finesse, and national unity over individual prestige. As we face the mounting challenges of an uncertain world, where crises move faster than committees, the lessons of that welder's vision still ring true. Build faster than the storm, trust the many. And above all, never dismiss an idea just because it sounds insane. For in moments of darkness, that could be the very idea that changes everything. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So now, when we remember the Liberty ship, let us not simply salute what was built, but how and why it was built. It was proof that bold thinking can outpace destruction, that speed can defeat precision when time runs short, and that ordinary people using extraordinary will can steer the course of history. It isn't just a story of wartime logistics, it's a story of human potential unleashed under pressure. From concept to keel, from skepticism to salvation, the Liberty ship reminds us that insanity is often the price of innovation. And in the right moment, it is exactly what the world requires. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Looking back, the Liberty ship stands as one of the most effective weapons of the entire war, not because it fought, but because it enabled the fight. Its sheer existence altered strategies, expanded supply lines, and shortened campaigns by months. More than 100 Allied divisions advanced on food and fuel ferried by its holds. Its decks bore the weight of tanks that would free cities, and its hulls carried troops who had memorized its every creek on long ocean crossings. For all its cracks and quirks, the Liberty ship achieved what no conventional naval platform could. It democratized victory. It proved that might could be manufactured en masse, and that in the crucible of war, even a so-called insane idea could become the scaffolding of salvation. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So the next time we marvel at sleek missile systems or autonomous drones, remember the Liberty ship, a rust-streaked, slab-sided cargo hauler, born not from genius, but grit. It whispered a new philosophy into the furnace-scorched air of wartime America. That speed can be strategy, that production can be power, and that one welder's defiance against the status quo can cascade into global consequence. We teach history as a series of battles and treaties, but sometimes history is welded together on midnight shifts, in coastal yards that mangled tradition into transformation. The Liberty ship was not merely a vessel sailing through salt and gunfire, it was proof that when vision outpaces fear, even the wildest idea can become the keystone of victory. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. To truly honor the Liberty ship is to understand that its legacy is alive, not only in rusted hulls or commemorative plaques, but in every rapid response to crisis. every audacious plan that trades elegance for effectiveness. It lives in startup workshops that turn shipping containers into hospitals, in engineers who prototype ventilators overnight, in the hands of anyone who dares to create faster than fear can spread. The Liberty Ship is a reminder that innovation does not wait for ideal conditions. It answers the call with urgency, improvisation, and unity. Amid the murky waters of uncertainty, it sails as a symbol of what humans can achieve when desperation meets determination. In the end, it wasn't the ship itself that changed history. It was the unstoppable will behind it. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. The Liberty Ship story closes not just with the clang of steel or the triumph of industry, but with a quiet warning carried through time, a call to look past convention when the stakes are high. It tells us that the remarkable is rarely pristine, that greatness may rise from flawed shortcuts and borrowed time. In a world increasingly reliant on precision algorithms and digital perfection, the Liberty Ship remains a totem for a different power. The furious resolve to simply begin, to build, to act. That Welder's crazy idea did more than launch ships. It launched a way of thinking built on urgency and trust in the many. And for all its crude angles and ragged welds, it stood afloat when history most needed ballast. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Perhaps the greatest tribute we can offer the Liberty Ship today is not silence in reverence, but action in its spirit. As threats evolve and crises test the boundaries of planning, we would do well to channel the relentless practicality that defined Kaiser's vision. When the world falters, we must remember that the solution may breathe not in tradition or perfection, but in courage, speed, and the collective grind of hands set to work. The Liberty Ship was never meant to last forever, but its lesson is timeless. In the crucible of danger, audacity is not optional, it is survival. That a welder dared to think differently when the world cried out for help is not just a chapter in history, it is a blueprint for the future. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So let the Liberty Ship stand, not just as a page in war chronicles, but as a compass pointing toward bold action in moments of paralysis. Let its story pass from steel to spirit, inherited by each new generation facing impossible choices, because in its creaking hulls and blistered welds, we glimpse the hearts of people who built when others broke, who forged unity and fire, and who understood that ideas, no matter how wild, can carry nations across turbulent seas. As new storms gather on new horizons, may we remember that greatness is often ugly, chaotic, and unfinished, but necessary all the same. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In remembering the Liberty Ship, we are called not solely to commemorate, but to emulate, to reforge our own responses to crisis with the urgency, willpower, and openness that defined its improbable rise. It reminds us that transformative solutions rarely look polished, rarely arrive through consensus, and are almost always born from discomfort. The Liberty Ship defied the rules because it had to, and in doing so, it gave us more than cargo capacity. It gave us a new paradigm for risk, speed, and daring. When the next global emergency demands that we build faster, think louder, and act against the grain, may we look back on that welder's spark and understand its deeper message, that in the race between collapse and creation, courage is the cutting torch. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So let us weld that lesson into memory, because the next crisis may not give us years or committees or perfect plans. It may come crashing down as fast as a torpedo through steel, demanding not poise, but boldness. The Liberty Ship teaches that sometimes salvation means building anyway in the rain, in the dark, with the tools in hand and the clock against us. It honors those who didn't wait for permission to innovate, who didn't need titles to make history. And it asks us, even now, to be those people, to light the torch, to swing the hammer, to believe that from chaos, clarity can still be forged. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. As the final arc weld cooled and the last Liberty Ship slid into the Atlantic, the echoes of its legacy carried far beyond the sea. It was never about steel alone, but about faith in people in their capacity to adapt, to rise, and to redefine what could be done. The blueprint Kaiser left behind wasn't just for cargo ships, it was for courage under deadline, for radical imagination in the face of annihilation. And so, long after the engines fell silent and the paint chipped away, the spirit of that insane idea still burns in every place where humanity refuses to be outpaced by fear. Because in the darkest hours, we don't just need weapons, we need courage disguised as construction. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. And so, as history loops forward and storm clouds gather once more on the horizon of global uncertainty, the Liberty ship reminds us that even against impossible odds, collective resolve can still outmatch chaos. It tells us that innovation does not always wear a lab coat or speak with authority. It sometimes arrives in coveralls, wielding a blowtorch and asking why not. That insane idea, once doubted by the experts, built the vessels that carried freedom across oceans. Its legacy lives in every bold leap, every rapid build, every refusal to wait. Let the memory of those ships endure not just as maritime myths, but as marching orders for today's challenges. Because in the furnace of crisis, brilliance isn't planned, it's built. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. As we close the chapter on the Liberty ship, we must carry forward not just its legacy, but its lesson, that speed, practicality, and the power of collective will can change the course of history. The oceans it once crossed are quieter now, and the men and women who built them are fewer with each passing year. But their work echoes on not in headlines, but in the quiet confidence that when the moment comes, when the world needs something built quickly from scratch and against all odds, there will be those ready to rise, with hammers instead of hesitation, with purpose instead of perfection. So let this not be the end of the story, but a spark for the next one. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. The Liberty ship's voyage through history ends not with a bang, but with a blueprint to act, to adapt, to believe that something deemed ridiculous today may save everything tomorrow. It brought no glory in combat, but it delivered what battles could not: sustainability, momentum, and proof that even in the deepest crises, the cure might lie in a single, unorthodox spark. We honor it not through nostalgia, but through emulation in every rushed vaccine rollout, emergency shelter deployment, or improvised supply chain. Because in the grand theater of war, the Liberty ship stood backstage, unseen by medals but indispensable to victory. And from the flames of that welder's torch, the world learned a daring truth. History bends not always under force, but under the weight of one good idea, done fast and without fear. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So let this be our rallying cry, not for war, but for readiness, not for destruction, but for bold creation under pressure. The Liberty ship endures as a floating testament that progress does not wait for the perfect pitch or the safest bet. It comes in the form of welds laid fast, ideas acted on quickly, and people pulled together by shared purpose. In every future moment when hesitation tempts delay and doubt demands retreat, may we remember the welder who wasn't afraid to challenge orthodoxy, the factory workers who built through fatigue, and the vessels that carried more than cargo, they carried conviction. What was once written off as insane became a miracle of momentum. And as long as we face crises with that same spirit, fueled by urgent collaboration and unfettered vision, then the legacy of the Liberty ship sails on. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In the silence that follows innovation, the Liberty ship still speaks. It speaks to those building in real time, under stress, with lives on the line. It speaks in the hum of factories retooled for purpose, in the grit of volunteers rising to sudden challenge, and in the blueprint of action without applause. What began as one welder's outlandish dream now endures as a guiding light for emergency response and industrial courage. We remember it not because it was perfect, but because it was enough, fast enough, strong enough, built enough. It met the moment. And for all its rust and rivets, it proved that when the world quakes, sometimes the greatest answer is not a weapon, but a weld. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. The legacy of the Liberty ship ends not in dry dock, but in the enduring human impulse to build under duress. It reminds us that sometimes all it takes is one individual bold enough to ask, why not faster? Why not differently? When tradition trembled before the scale of need, manufacturing rose to meet it with sweat and steel. It was neither glamorous nor flawless, but it worked. Today, as we brace against new global challenges with the same urgency and doubt that shadowed the 1940 seconds, the Liberty ship offers us not nostalgia, but guidance. Act with urgency, build with purpose, and never underestimate the power of an idea that dares to disassemble the impossible. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. Perhaps the final testament to the Liberty ship isn't found in steel at all, but in the blueprint it etched across our collective conscience. It whispered to future crises that response need not await perfection, that the extraordinary can be mass-produced when urgency demands it. Every paneled section, every improvised weld, every soul who clocked in before sunup and left after dark, they weren't just fueling war, they were proving that imagination pressed into action could outpace catastrophe. As we look ahead, that may be the most vital cargo these ships ever carried. A reminder that when the horizon burns, it is not pride or polish that races to the rescue, but those mad enough, bold enough, fast enough to build their way through fire. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything.